rising of the sun we remember. In the blowing of the wind we remember. In the opening of buds we remember. We remember. In the Poorest of the sky we remember. In the rustling of the leaves we remember. 'Cause a year starts and it ends, we remember. We remember. When we're weary and need strength, we remember. When we're lost and sick at heart, we remember. When we've joys we yearn to share, we remember. We remember. So long as we live, they too shall live. They are now a part of us. They are now a part of us. As we remember, we remember. We remember. We remember.
to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and with thanksgiving I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and with thanksgiving I'll be a living sanctuary for you. V'asuli mikdash v'shachanti betocham va'anachnu nevarech ya me'ata ve'ad olam. Oh Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and with thanksgiving I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
Adonai roi lo echsar binot deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yenaleni nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'magelei tzedek, yancheni v'magelei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeitz al-mavet lo irara, ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefanai shulchan neged zorai dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi reva. כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים.
It is so very good to be back. Truly, like it just fills my heart. I was having to hold myself back from crying through that whole opening song. Thank you, everyone. It's so good to be with you and singing. Really, really missed being at services with you. Although, in a sense, I was with you. I was watching on the other side where so many of our community are watching through their screens from their homes. I would turn on my central live streaming, and I loved every week. I was surprised by beautiful things, our incredible confirmation class, watching and marveling at this team naming babies, and great speakers like Reverend Otis Moss, who was able to speak to our congregation. I was listening for people who were on our Misha Beirach list and praying for their health, and the too many names of our lost loved ones with the Kaddish list. I felt deeply connected to all of you, even when I was not here physically. And in a week like this past one, where I felt cracked open by the shootings that happened in Atlanta this week, I thought to myself, there is no place I want to be but here. I need to be with my community. I need the support of being surrounded by a congregation that I know respects the dignity of all people, a community of people that I know work to actually bring more love into the world, to build bridges of understanding and connection with others. And so it feels like of all weeks for me to be able to come back now and feel the support of everyone it's a gift to be back with you. So thank you for embracing your Korean rabbi who, and together we've built this, I think, very diverse community that stretches out to New York and beyond and all around the world, all of you watching. So I want to say Shabbat Shalom to all of you in all the many, many places that you are. I'm Rabbi Angela Buchdahl. If you joined live streaming in the last 4 months, you don't know who I am. I'm one of the rabbis at Central Synagogue, and I'm joined tonight by my colleagues, Rabbi Ari Lorge, by Cantor Julia Cadrain, our incredible music director, Dave Strickland, and our amazing crew of musicians. I want to thank our tech and AV team who make us sound good always, and say Shabbat Shalom to all of you. So whatever you bring into the space tonight, whether you are feeling heartbreak over the news, or worrying about preparing for your Passover Seders, or maybe feeling really excited because you're vaccinated, and maybe you're going to see family and friends for this Seder for the first time, whatever you are feeling, I invite you to be present and bring all of that into this moment to feel the joy and peace of Shabbat and this time of not just striving, but just being. So if you don't quite feel settled and ready yet, let the music take you there. And let's bring in the glow of our Shabbat candles that will also help us bring a little of that Shabbat spirit in. I'm really pleased to invite Amy Glickman, who is a board member and an incredible leader on our central organizing team, and her husband, Andy Koritskis, to join us for leading the Shabbat candles. There you are. Nice to see you both. If you will help us by lighting the Shabbat candles, we'll join in blessing with you. To see you both. I think we're now ready to let some of that Shabbat spirit descend and let this psalm, we'll begin with Psalm 96, help us get there, page 13. We're going to announce that, sorry. It's okay.
continue with Zamru Ladonai.
Page 20 and 21, we will now welcome in the Sabbath bride. No matter where you are, we will face your doorway when we get to the last verse, if you're able, so that we might actually physically greet the Sabbath with our heart, soul, body, mind, and our voices. We'll join in verses 1, 2, 5, and 9.
לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. שבת תפילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בליל שבת נקבלה. יאללה דודי, יאללה חנני, יאללה לקראת כלה, נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בעורף קומי אורי. אורי, אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נעלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בליל שבת נקבלה. יאללה דודי, יאללה חנני, יאללה לקראת כלה, נקבלה. בואי ושלום עטרת בליל, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, בליל שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, יאללה חנני, יאללה לקראת כלה, נקבלה. לך דודי, יאללה חנני, יאללה לקראת כלה, נקבלה. יאללה דודי, יאללה חנני, יאללה לקראת כלה, נקבלה.
Remain standing if we're able. Turn to our call to worship on page 28.
יאללה לילה, 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 יאללה לילה, לילה, יאללה, יאללה, לילה. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. יאללה לילה, לילה, יאללה, יאללה, יאללה,
I invite you to please be seated. We continue on page 30. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, v'chokhmah poteach she'arim, ובתבונה משנה עתים, ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה, גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים.
If you have your prayer books, I invite you to turn to page 33 and join me at the top of the page in reading. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לעליכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We turn to page 39 as we sing our redemption prayer and as we approach the holiday of Passover, our holiday of redemption. Let us remember that we can only do this together, not just for our people, but for all people who need to be freed. Please join with us. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught. Before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it's eternally Egypt.
That there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together, singing la, ya la la. Micha we asked for God's sheltering presence. I think you have more to say, Rabbi Buchtal, about that.
That's right. Well, when we ask for that sheltering presence, we call it a Sukkat Shalom. And you might imagine when you want a sheltering presence that you've got a sturdy home. But if you think about a sukkah, well, it's got wooden posts and a flimsy roof and not very strong walls. I was reminded of that this week, how a sukkah of peace can feel shattered. So maybe we should not be seeking our sukkah of peace in physical structures that we build around us. Maybe a sukkah of peace is made by the people that we fill in that home. And I was really touched this week to receive so many emails from friends and colleagues, from people I haven't heard from, some of them since rabbinical school or from a long time ago, just reaching out to say, I hope you're doing okay. And I was so touched by that. And I realized that that is the way we bring a sukkah of wholeness, a shelter of peace, by bringing our compassion and our presence to each other. So let us do that together for one another right now. Bring our sukkah, shalom, right now, this loving presence of peace. Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai, Eloheinu, Leshalom, Leshalom, Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai, Eloheinu, Leshalom. V'hamideinu malkeinu l'chaim, u'leshalom, u'leshalom. Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai, Eloheinu, Leshalom, ufros aleinu, Sukkat shlomecha, Hashkivenu, Adonai, Eloheinu, Hashkivenu, Adonai, Eloheinu, Leshalom, Adonai, Eloheinu, Leshalom. We enter into this kavanah, which helps us with our Amidah, these words of prayer of tefillah. We turn to page 155 and rise if you're able. Adonai sfatai tivta, Adonai sfatai tivta, ufi yagid tehilatecha,
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחי מתים, אתה רב והושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, צומח נופלים והופך חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, בנאמן אתה החיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
I invite you to continue through tefillah, using the words in this prayer book, or perhaps closing them and offering the words of your heart, or just taking in some moments of silence.
As we approach spring and Passover, which is around the corner, it's traditional to sing and to read lines from our beautiful ancient love poetry, Song of Songs. And this beautiful text, Dodi Li, which means I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine, comes from that tradition from Song of Songs.
We begin a new book of Torah this week. The opening words of that book of Torah puzzled the ancient rabbis. It starts, Vayikra el Moshe, Vayidaber Adonai elav. God called out to Moses and spoke to him. This puzzled the rabbis and our sages because so often, almost everywhere else in Torah, we hear over and over again, Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe, God spoke to Moses, God spoke with Moshe. So why here does it tell us that God first calls out to Moses and then speaks to him? Amongst the mountains of commentary, I would lift up one idea, which is that it's meant to remind us that God is constantly calling to us, always and ever, calling out, waiting for us to heed that call and initiate a dialogue. No matter how alone or embittered, how pained, how distant we might feel, God is still there calling, hoping that we will hear and respond in turn. Never the cause of our trouble. God is there, always the source of our strength and support. And if we listen, ever ready with words of comfort and love. And we know there are moments when we are not in the position to heed God's call, not ready to hear. And that's why we as a community give voice to God's loving words, like we do now, each week, in our Misha Berach L'Cholim, in our prayer for healing, speaking these words on God's behalf, drawing near, as we do on this week, to these dear ones, members of our armed forces, Leibish Abba, Rivka Bracha Bat Avraham, Kathy Barron, Eileen Berger, Donald Brief, Jerry Calderon, Lou Chen, Erwin Diamond, Alexandra Duran, Marcia Firestone, Corey Flaum, Jerry Friedman, Janie Furse, Ashley Goodman, Alex Hochberg, Howard Hochberg, Anna Kaufman, Marjorie Lentz, Roy Lipman, Erwin Merkatz, Sophia Monasabian, Ronnie Oppenheim, Brigida Perez Prado, Sharon Resnick, Carol Roman, Leslie Rosenberg, Sandy Schupper, Bill Smith, Alan Wolf, Pam Young, and the AAPI community, letting you know that we stand with you against hate, always. We invite you to add your loved ones to these dear ones from our community. And we pray that the Holy One might have mercy upon them and send to them a speedy healing of body, mind, and spirit, as we join together with these loving words calling out to you.
Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will
every week we take time to lift up that joy, knowing that when we have celebrations or momentous moments, when we share them in community, we enrich one another. So we'll lift up some blessings, and if they're true for you, I'll invite you to stand and remain standing. And no matter where we are, we'll be a community on our feet in recognition of the blessings around us. If you are marking a birthday in the week ahead, or you've marked one in the week behind, we'll invite you to rise. Or if you're marking an anniversary or have marked one this past week, we'll invite you to rise. If you're celebrating some other simcha, some other joyous occasion, maybe a wedding in your family, new life born into your community, in a moment we'll be naming a new member of our community who was recently born. We'll invite you to rise. If you received a vaccine this week, we'll invite you to rise. Or if you helped someone get a slot so that they could be vaccinated, we'll invite you to rise. If you've already begun Passover cooking, we'll invite you to rise. We want to also mention something that our community is celebrating, which is the passage of the Halt solitary bill that passed this week in New York State. This bill limits the use of segregated confinement in New York jails and prisons. And our community, along with a wide, diverse community, came together, led by men and women who experienced years in solitary confinement, some as teenagers, others as elders, some even while pregnant, in that terrible condition, serving sentences. So this law will ensure that New York's jails and prisons conform to international standards of humane treatment. And we are grateful for that, and grateful to our members who were a part of that coalition that helped that bill pass. We also want to mark what I know so many of you are probably already on your feet waiting to hear. And I peeked at the comments at the very beginning of the service. You had a lot of people very excited about your return. So if you are grateful and excited that Rabbi Buchdahl is back, returned from her well-deserved sabbatical, and bringing her voice and Torah back to our community, I think all of us will be on our feet and being able to offer this prayer of blessing and gratitude for God for allowing us to reach this moment. Rabbi Rubin now to introduce this wonderful new individual into our community for the reception of this Hebrew name.
Thank you, Rabbi Lorge. It is such a pleasure to be here with Jonathan and Brittany Cyrilnik and their daughter Sloan. It is so wonderful to be zooming in for this Simcha. Johnny and Brittany, I know that you have so many friends and family watching tonight, and we welcome them. And we're so grateful for this technology that allows us to celebrate together. We're so thrilled by the growth of your family, and we will now bring your beautiful baby, look at that baby, your daughter Sloan Mackenzie Cyrilnik, into the covenant of the Jewish people. A little historical context, God promised Abraham that the Jewish people would live forever, that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. And Sloan is living proof that this promise is being renewed again. Her Hebrew name will designate her as a link among the generations of our people. I love that you have chosen names that honor both of your families. Sloane's middle name in English, Mackenzie, is your maiden name, Brittany, and so she will always know what a strong and loving family she comes from on her mother's side. And in Hebrew, you two have chosen the name Malcha for her in honor of Johnny, your paternal grandmother. Mildred, or Marcy as she was often called, was generous and sweet and hosted your family holiday meals, which you shared with me you remember very fondly from your childhood. And we hope that Malka also will inherit this love of family, hospitality, and generosity. It is my honor to give her the Hebrew naming blessing now. Eloheinu velohei avotenu ve'imotenu, kayem et hayalda hazot la'aviha ule'ima v'krei shma be'Yisrael malcha. Yismach ha'av b'yotzei halatza v'tagel imo b'fri b'tina. Zot haketana gedola tehiyeh kashem shenichnas labrit, kain tikanes laTorah ulechupa ulema'asim tovim. God and God of our ancestors, sustain this child through her parents' loving care. Let her be known among our people by the name Malcha. May her name be a source of joy to her and inspire her to serve our people and all humankind. May her parents rejoice in the growth of body and soul. As they have brought her into the covenant of the Jewish people, so may they, with wisdom and patience, lead her to a life filled with Torah, the blessing of learning and community, chuppah, a loving relationship worthy of God's blessing, and ma'asim tovim, the pursuit of good deeds. And together as a community we say, Amen. Johnny and Brittany, I have no doubt that Sloane, Malcha, as we have named her tonight, will shine a distinctive light for humanity. It is a new chapter in the life of your family. You have blessed our community with your daughter, and now we'd like to bless you with the oldest benedictions in Judaism. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha, may God's presence shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha malcha shalom. May God be with you, Malcha, and your parents and your grandparents, and grant you peace. Amen, and Mazel Tov to your entire family.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Reuben, for leading that beautiful naming. And to Johnny and Brittany, I hope you can hear me. I just want to say Mazel Tov. I feel like I remember when it wasn't that long ago that we were having a conversation before you were married, and now you have this beautiful child and your family is grown. And it is so touching for me to see it. And to know also that Sloane's grandparents, Sandy and Jill, are such beloved members of this congregation. To have 3 generations is such a blessing for us in this community. So I just want to say to you, Sloane, that you've come into an amazing family. But I want you to know it's not just your parents and grandparents. You've got all of us here at Central as part of your extended family. So we welcome you and we send you much love and Mazel Tov. We are in a new book, Vayikra, the Book of Leviticus, and it reads a little bit like a sacrificial handbook for the priests. But before we move to week after week after week of sacrifices, I wanted to examine just the very first word in the book. It has an oddity in the script. You see, the first word is written where the last letter is very small, a tiny little aleph. In every Torah scroll, it's written this way. Now, even though the aleph is a silent letter, and it's very small, if that letter was removed altogether, it would radically change the meaning of this first word. You see, if it says, Vayikra el Moshe, with the aleph, the sentence translates as, and God called Moses. But without the aleph, it becomes Vayikar, and the sentence reads, and God happened upon Moses, as if by accident. The Baal HaTurim, a Spanish commentator from the Middle Ages, explains that this small olive is to Moses' credit. He was so humble and so unassuming. He didn't want anyone to think that God especially picked him, called on him. Rather, he frames this meeting as if it were a chance encounter by God. Could have happened to anyone. Now, most years when I come across these opening words of our book, I admire the humility and the self-abasement of our leader Moses. But this week, in the wake of the horrific shootings in Asian massage parlors in Atlanta, I feel chastened by this little olive. There are moments when being silent, attempting invisibility, not taking up your proper space, can become a liability, an impediment to action, maybe even an abdication of leadership. I will admit, this week when I got some emails from the Jewish press, from UJA, from the Cardinal's office, they were wanting responses to the shooting. And there aren't a lot of Asian rabbis to call upon. I'll admit the first thing I wanted to do was go back to my sabbatical. I felt deficient. Do I have to be the spokesperson? But I felt that in this moment, it was a Vayikra moment. I realized that even though I am not a leader of an Asian community, I am an Asian leader, and it doesn't serve this moment for me to demur and say, who am I to speak? And for the first time in my life, I actually worry about my Korean mother taking a walk outside alone. This week's horrific shooting follows a year of surging anti-Asian hate crime. Stop AAPI Hate reports over 3,800 racist incidents against Asians in the last year. Hate crimes are not always easy to identify, and while the media has been cautious in calling this a racially motivated crime, the Chosun Ilbo, which is a Korean newspaper, interviewed a witness who said that the killer shouted, "I'm going to kill all Asians," as he shot his victims. Now, the Asian community's response in the face of indignity and violence has often been to be quiet. I was part of an interfaith rally yesterday in support of the Asian community, and the Reverend Drew Hyun, a Korean American, explained what he had always been taught. When you're bullied or harassed, just keep your head down. Don't look right or left. Don't make waves. Drew runs a thriving church here in Midtown. He was born in this country. But he shared a story of taking a friend of his who was visiting from Latvia around New York City. And he said that as they were walking through, tourists would come up and approach his friend from Latvia and ask for directions. That when they went to restaurants, that the waiters would always address his friend from Latvia first and give him the check. Drew said, "My friend was the foreigner, but I, as an Asian American, am the perpetual stranger." Asian stories are underrepresented in the media and in American culture generally. It took to when I was 46 years old that I could see the first movie that actually had multiple Asian leads in it. Crazy Rich Asians, the only movie that I actually paid for to see in a theater twice. Now, it wasn't so great, and the characters were a little bit over the top, but at least they weren't only the Asian seductress or the bumbling Long Duk Dong, whose arrival was announced with a Chinese gong. The way Asians have long been portrayed and pigeonholed. Now, it might sound superficial, but these caricatures and the absence of Asian American stories in our culture has made it really easy to stereotype and ignore. And what most Americans don't know is that the rash of hate crimes and the horrific shooting is only the most recent of many struggles that are in the Asian American community. Do you know that the poorest ethnic group in New York City are Asian Americans? I was surprised to learn this statistic 3 years ago at the Korean American Cultural Foundation's first Giving Summit. The KACF provides social services and emergency assistance in the Korean community and beyond. It is like the UJA of the Korean community. I checked in with the director of KACF this week. She shared with me that before the pandemic, the unemployment rate in the New York Korean community was about 3%, and it shot up to 26% within 2 months of the pandemic. The forced closure of delis, dry cleaners, nail salons, and more had a disproportionate economic impact on the Asian community in New York. But that's still a story that is not being told. The media has given a lot of attention to the sadistic Atlanta shooter, but very little to the victims. But my mother shared a story that she read in her Korean language daily newspaper, which gave life to the victims. And one detail she told me just broke me. That many of the victims of the shooting not only worked, but actually lived in those salons. They slept in small rooms in the back in a nondescript building on a strip mall. This image, or this reality, is very far from the model minority stereotype of Asians who are good at math and take all the spots at Stuyvesant and Harvard. So how do we move forward? What can we do? The Jewish community knows particularly well what it feels like to be the scapegoat. We know that words have consequences and can lead to dehumanization and harassment and even violence. So one of the first things we can do is not only condemn the violence, but also speak out against the dangerous rhetoric. If you hear someone calling COVID the Kung flu or the China virus, help them understand that those words unfairly inflame and blame. It's also no small gesture to ask ourselves, how do we together create a bulwark against bigotry and hatred in all its forms? We should not have to make a hierarchy of who has it worse right now. Hate is hate. And we cannot allow the model minority myth of the Asian community to become a wedge between Asians and other historically oppressed communities. And there is another thing I want to ask the Jewish community in particular to do right now. Take Passover seriously. To explain what I mean, I want to end with a story. This past fall, my 18-year-old son Eli took a semester in Korea to learn Korean and meet my relatives. It was the first time that Eli was spending significant time living outside of New York City. Now, he spent his first 14 days in the country in quarantine in a tiny little 9x12 government-sanctioned motel room, and he emerged into sunlight after 14 days on Erev Rosh Hashanah, which he spent with a small progressive community in Seoul. He spent Tashlich with Chabad and part of the holidays all alone. He called me afterward and he reflected, "Mom, you know, in some ways these were my least Jewish high holidays. I wasn't with my family. I didn't go to all the services, and there are like no Jews here," he said. But in another way, he said, "I've never felt more Jewish in my life." "How so?" I asked him. He said, "Now I really understand what it feels like to be a stranger." Well, If that is all he ever took from all his years of Jewish education, dayenu, as we say, it would be enough. In a week's time, we will all be sitting around our Seder tables. We will not only recount a story of ancestors who were slaves, but we are going to retell and recount a story of ourselves as slaves. We eat the bread of affliction. We taste our tears. We retell our experience as a stranger. Can you remember what it feels like to have the soul of a stranger? The more we can truly inhabit this story, the more we will cultivate our radical empathy. The more we will feel commanded to look out for and even love the stranger, because we too were that stranger. Right now, for the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities who feel like the perpetual strangers in America, listening to their stories and empathizing with them would be transformative. We have an opportunity here as we celebrate our freedom to make this story alive right now in our time. To remember that our liberation is tied to the redemption of all people, and that stepping into the shoes of the stranger is our religious mandate. God expects us to pay attention. Who is still in Mitzrayim, in the narrow places? We have to remember our tradition's foundational story. Remember, we were once there.
We're so grateful for those words and that teaching.
Thank you.
We rise together now in body or in spirit. We join together for Aleinu on page 282, dreaming of a day when all people will be free and will be at peace.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו גויי ארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, ובור עלינו ככל המונה, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
This week and in the weeks moving forward, we'll be inviting members observing their first yahrzeits of their loved ones to join us virtually to light our communal yahrzeit candles. Deborah Cantor and the Cohen family lit tonight in honor of the first yahrzeit of their loved ones, whose names we'll read shortly. We're thinking of you, and we're thinking of them. As we prepare to recite Kaddish, I'm reminded of a tale in the ancient writings of our sages that when humanity was driven out of Gan Eden, out of the Garden of Eden, out of paradise, that God was still gracious, God still loved us. And knowing that we would face sorrow having found mortality, God gave to Adam and Eve something special. God said, "Here, take this, it shall comfort you." And God gave to them the first tear. And so it was that as we lost paradise, we also gained suffering's chief antidote. So as we light these yahrzeit candles, bringing to mind sorrows, some of which perhaps have dulled over time, some still sharp, we remember the tears we wept and the tears we still weep. As we remember these dear ones we've lost in recent weeks: Carol Grossman Abramson, niece of Suzanne de Arzara; Cy Baum, husband of Judy, father of Andrew; Theodore Cohn, father of Karen, Don, Jordan, and brother of Amy; Gerald Fengel, father of Cheryl, Brian, and Elisa; Harvey Grossman, Pearl Hendler, mother of Susan, Mark, Michelle, and Richard; Barbara Linhart, mother of Ted and Peter; Charles Lutke, stepfather of Peter Blum; Miriam Schaefer, mother of Leslie Perkins; Arlene Katisker Westreich, mother of Neil and Marjorie; Renee Weiss, mother of Deborah Wiener, Jeffrey, and Cheryl. And we weep for the 23 of our neighbors killed this week in mass shootings in America. As of the outset of Shabbat, no members of our armed services died this week, and for that we are relieved. We remember these names of those whose yahrzeits occur on this Shabbat: Helma Berger, Herbert Bejur, Jean Bleckman, Margot Bakoza, Stanley Brill, Susan Buxbaum, Victor Karady, Shirley Chavkin, Mimi Cohen, Richard Cohen, Sidney Cohen, Pauline Dick, Seymour Dool, Cecile Eric, Fred Eric, Tilly Ellen, Jane Erdos, Edward Falk, Bruno Farjon, Mark Finkelstein, Joseph Flaum, Tim Flint, Ethel Friedman, Erwin Gilston, Sidel Ginsburg, Carol Goldshine, Betty Stern Green, Dorothy Hannenberg, Hortense Helfenbein, Lee Hoffman, Bert Horwitz, Alexander Hun, Shirley Kahan, Erwin Canner, David Cantor, Henrietta Kostanowitz, Lillian Cones, Dana Copland, Morris Lindy, Abraham Lipsky, Faye Marco, Henry M. Marco, John Miller, Alvin Newborn, George Oppenheim, Rose Orenberg, Arlene Orenstein, David Paley, Mildred Perlstadt, Harry Powers, Donna Press, Larry Raisfeld, Herbert Rhine, Doris Roberts, Viola Rosman, Bruce Roswick, David Roth, Julius Roth, Kate Rothkopf, Edmund O. Rothschild, Abraham Rubin, Sylvia Samick, Julian Sandler, Ginger Sassone, Jesse Shantz, Belle Schwartz, Jeffrey Silber, Martin I. Silverman, Bernard Snower, Patricia Spear, Louis Sternberg, Melvin Swig, David Tanner, Herb Turowski, Dottie Vogel, Sally Blaufeld Volkman, Michael Warner, Edward Weil, Diana Gotthelf Weinberg, Joseph Weiss, Francis Weinberg, Daniel Yoel, Jill Yoel. Zichronam livracha. May all of their memories be for a blessing. We'd invite you, if you're in a period of Shiva, the first 7 days of mourning the loss of your loved one, to rise. And if you're in a period of shloshim, the first 30 days of mourning the loss of your loved one, we'd invite you to rise. We invite you to rise if you're within the first year of mourning your loss. And all those whose yahrzeits occur on this Shabbat, we'd invite you to rise as well. As we, your community, rise to surround you and support you. Together, we'll join in words of Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish, on page 294. 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabba, v'alma divrach chirteh v'amlich malchuteh, b'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach leolam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudusha berichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amira mi'olam v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. U'ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru Amen. Shabbat Shalom. In a moment, we'll close together in song. A few brief announcements between now and then. First, it's a joy to have so many of you joining us as part of our virtual community, and we hope that you'll join us for future worship services. If you're wondering about tomorrow morning, you can find information about our Shabbat morning worship online.
I'm on for Mishkan tomorrow. I hope you'll join me.
So, I mean, that's a really good endorsement. But yes, now that you're all really interested, go ahead and find that information online. You can always join us, though, on Facebook Live, our YouTube channel, and JBS as well. I think other programming coming up, maybe we just want to mention on Sunday, Rabbi Buchdahl, do you want to say a word? I think you know more details on that.
Okay. Sunday, we have an incredible interfaith program that is around helping end mass incarceration and the kind of current enslavement in our own time, spiritual preparation, and we have Senator Raphael Warnock is actually kicking off the program. Rabbi Hilly Haber and Rabbi Nicole Auerbach have been planning this and been the leads with our organizing team, but we have an array of speakers, some wonderful ways that people will be able to be in conversation. We really hope you'll join us.
What time?
It's most of the day, and I actually don't know the exact timing, so you want to look at it on our Facebook page. You can find information, or on our website. Please join us.
So we're going to continue now with Kiddush and Motzi.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too.
It's been a few weeks since I've been the clergy person closest to the wine and the challah, so I've not had any. And my daughters are going to be thrilled that I'm
because once you touch the challah, you get to take it home.
You know, we can't share it. I actually wish I could share it because it's a lot for one family, but I just got lucky tonight. So if you have a glass of anything at all at home, I invite you to raise it with me, and we'll bless together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Borei Puri Hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom tefila le'mikra'ei kodesh, zecher le'tziyat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'achata, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodeshecha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
Have you ever heard a more beautiful amen?
That was the best amen, guys.
We have
Thank
the best
you.
choir. I want to bless this challah, as I've done in recent weeks, in honor of all of our children who used to fill our bima in pre-COVID times, and God willing, may they again.
They will
soon.
again soon.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Our closing song is on page 321. I didn't
That's
request
right.
this melody, but it is my favorite,
Oh,
so I'm
me
feeling very
too.
glad about that.
Cantor Ray knows this is one of my top 5, so as a little present for me coming back, she put this on the cue sheet, which I really appreciate. Thank you. And I was kind of sweating it. When you haven't been here for 4 months, I was like worried I would forget what I was supposed to do. But you know what? It's like riding a bike, as they say, especially when you're all with us. So please join me.
Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra ve'en asa b'chefso kol azai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hoveh ve'hu yeh v'tifara Adon olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra ve'en asa b'chefso azai melech shemo nikra ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא הווה והוא יהיה בתפארה הוא אחד ואין שני להמשילו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרד והוא אלי וחי גואלי וצור חבלי ועת צרה והוא ניסי ונוסתי ונקלצי ביום בידו הפקירוכי ואת אישה להעירה והיפוכי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא בידה הפקירוכי ואת אישה להעירה והיפוכי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא יירא אדוני לי ולא יירא אדוני לי ולא יירא.
I know that our spirit is in God's hands, and so we shall not be afraid. May we go forward with strength. Love being back with all of you. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.